Hi everybody, Admir with UTS Equipment Company here. I'm standing next to our TYM T25. The T25 is probably the most popular tractor in the TYM lineup. And I want to use this video to talk about, I won't say issues, but it's really the things that most of our customers run into, the questions they have when they first take this tractor home. So, the 3-point hitch, right? Every single tractor, the 3-point hitch, it's what makes a tractor. There are a lot of components involved with making this work. And I want to discuss how it works, the things that can kind of throw you off a little bit if you don't know exactly what's going on, what each component does. So the 3-point hitch raises and lowers hydraulically. There is a big piston in the rear end that moves based on the hydraulic pressure from the pump. The way that this piston is controlled is the 3-point lever, up and down. The piston gets its oil from the hydraulic pump mounted on the front of the tractor engine, mounted on the tractor engine. The charge pressure from the pump first goes into the hydraulic valve, the loader valve, this thing right there. This is kind of a generic summary, but basically it goes into the loader valve, and from there it goes to the rear end. So there's a port on basically every loader valve. It's called the power beyond port. Basically, that's where the oil leaves that loader valve and goes beyond it. So in the case of the T25, it leaves the loader valve right there, and it goes to the top of the rear end. Now, the T25 comes standard with a rear hydraulic remote. What is a rear remote? Well, we'll get into that in a second. I've got a little thing to demo it with here too. But the oil leaves the loader valve, goes to the rear remote, and then goes to that big cylinder that raises and lowers the 3-point hitch. So there are the loader valve, rear remote, lift cylinder. There's another little contraption in there called the flow control valve, which regulates how all of this works. All of these systems kind of work together. The way that this contraption I'm referring to, this flow control valve, what that does is, first of all, it's this little knob here, and that controls the speed at which oil is allowed to flow in and out of that lift cylinder on the 3-point. It is also called a travel lock, because when it's completely turned clockwise, so all the way tight, it will lock the 3-point from moving at all. It is, like I said, it's referred to as a travel lock. It's referred to as a flow control or a speed control knob. So when it's not all the way in the lock position, what it lets you do is it lets you adjust the speed at which the 3-point on its own, not when you raise it with a lever, but the speed at which the 3-point lowers down from the pressure of the implement. So I'll give an example here. Here, we're going to lower the 3-point down, and it's very slowly moving down. Stopped it there. I'm going to start up the tractor and raise it back up. It's now all the way back up. Now I'm going to open this travel lock valve all the way. Now what you'll see is the 3-point moves a lot faster. You can see how quickly that went down. I'm going to raise it back up. It's all the way back up. Now I'm going to close this knob all the way. With this knob all the way closed, the 3-point will now not lower. It does not move an inch. It is completely locked. The system is locked out. When you release it, Want to do another example of releasing it all the way. I'm turning the knob, releasing it. The position lever is all the way down. When it's released, there is no pressure on the system now, or on that lift cylinder. So I can take my hand and just move this up and down. See? When that travel lock, speed control, flow control, whatever you want to call it, is all the way open, the 3-point hitch, it doesn't necessarily float, but essentially it does. You can easily move it up and down. When you lock it in place, it becomes a lot stiffer or all the way locked in place. This is used as you are, depending on the implement you have behind the tractor. For example, if it's a finish mower and you want it to flow with the contours of the ground, you want it a bit looser so that way it can easily go up and down. If you're doing a box blade and you want to cut into the dirt, you're going to have it closed, not all the way closed, but more closed than you would with a mower, because you don't want it to be able to push. You don't want the ground to be able to push it up. That is the flow control knob. Now, you just got your brand new tractor in, whether you bought it from us or whoever it may be, somebody that maybe didn't explain how this stuff works to you when you bought it, and your 3-point does not want to move. The first thing to check, so you're on your tractor, you're working this lever, nothing's happening. The first thing to check is that flow control knob. Make sure it's not all the way locked. Put it somewhere in the middle between the two ends, and then see what happens. Still doesn't want to move? Okay, next step is the rear remote. On a T25, it is this lever right here. That controls the rear remote. Now remember, the oil goes from the engine to the loader valve, to the rear remote, to the lift cylinder. That flow control knob is kind of controls how the whole system works. But the oil has to flow through the rear remote to get to that lift cylinder. If the rear remote is diverting that oil into the ports of the rear remote, your lift cylinder will not work. Second most common question we get after delivery of a tractor: hey, all of a sudden my 3-point does not want to work. I messed with that knob, it doesn't do anything. Okay, what is the position of this little red knob? Most of the time, getting on or off the tractor, somebody kicked it, and now the oil is going to the ports of the rear remote, and it is not going to the lift cylinder. So, your 3-point doesn't want to work, check your flow control, check your rear remote, make sure it's in neutral. The rear remote is a feature that has become standard on a lot of tractors from most brands. Basically, all bigger tractors come with a rear remote. TYM with the T25 decided to start making it standard. On a 264, it was never standard. It was always an option. If you wanted a backhoe, we would install a rear remote. Or if you just needed a rear remote, we would install one. On the T25, it is standard. Now, what does that rear remote even do? What is it used for? So remotes usually are to power hydraulic cylinders at the back of the tractor for whatever your implement might be. So I want to show an example of how that rear remote works. I've got two hoses. I've got a basic cylinder here. This can simulate having a hydraulic top link. It can simulate an angle on your grader blade. It can simulate a chute rotator on a snowblower, any number of things, just to show you guys how that works. So, hydraulic cylinder, 2 hoses. I'm going to fire it up. I don't know if you guys heard, but when the cylinder approached one end or the other, the sound of the tractor changed. So what's happening there is the cylinder is at its limit. All the oil basically has nowhere to go. So the relief valve is opening on the tractor and it's dumping the extra pressure into the tank, into the sump, basically into the rear end of this tractor. That's kind of the same thing that happens when you have the rear remote not in the neutral position. So when you're not using anything, and most guys never even use that rear remote for anything, but if it stays in one side or the other, what you end up doing is you're just deadheading your hydraulic system constantly. You're losing power. So it's very important to make sure that this piece is always in the neutral position when you're not using it. That's everything I wanted to cover in this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you find it helpful. If there are any other topics that you would like to see me discuss, any questions you may have, video suggestions, don't hesitate to leave a comment, send us a message. Thank you for watching.